And all, welcome to the Common Good Podcast on this Tuesday, January 11th. It's our politics day around here, which means that from somewhere just outside of Fayetteville, Arkansas, is Robb Ryerse. Somewhere,
hey everybody,
right in the heart of South Bend, Indiana, Dan Dietrich. And just outside of the great city of Minneapolis, Doug Pagitt. All taking up ramparts in our studios of change in America. That's every campaign wants change in America. Yeah, right. Rob, you look like you're on old Star Trek episodes, and you're starting to, beam me up to another.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little pixelated today. I don't know what's going on, what the problem is, but I'm,
Well, you sound
good spirits, even if I am a little pixelated.
Hey, we're going to talk a little bit of politics. We're going to have on a Reverend Dr. PhD Chris Jones, who is running for governor of Arkansas. Yeah. Rob, you and I have had a chance to talk with him. Vote Common Good has had a chance to do some training with his campaign. He's just one of the more impressive candidates I have seen. One of the great campaign videos. He, I hope, represents when he wins the governorship of Arkansas. People point at his campaign and his candidacy and election as one of these places where it's become clear that no longer do Republicans have a 100% advantage when it comes to connecting to faith voters or to issues of faith and the rest in America. So it's a turning point in America. I've already used now change in America and turning point. I mean, I'm on point today for politics.
It's morning in America again because of campaigns like Chris Jones's. Chris is running, for people that might not know, his opponent is none other than Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And so even if Chris was a terrible guy and a terrible candidate, we would be fully supporting him and trying to do everything we can to help him win. But the great thing is that he's fantastic. He's a fantastic person. Fantastic human being, fantastic candidate, and so this race is a tough one, but it's a really, really important one. So I'm excited that we get to introduce folks to Chris today.
Well, the good thing is, a lot of campaigns are about the candidates. Candidates still matter. So if you're thinking about running, friend, run. I don't just mean you, Rob. I mean anybody. Candidates make all the difference. Yeah, you're right. Look, if Sarah Huckabee Sanders was running against no one, we would support someone, right? Yes. It's sort of like, it's way better than having COVID to just have a cold. But not only is Chris Jones not COVID, in my metaphor here, he's not even a cold, he's the cure. This is great. But even if he was just an alternative cold, it's way better than COVID. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, on the other hand, God bless her. She's a child of God, and she should be loved and cared for, as everyone is. But as we're fond of saying around here, not every child of God and light of the world should be the governor of Arkansas. She should let her dim little light shine somewhere else until she can find the common good for all of us. She may otherwise be a fine person, but she should stay out of politics, in my view. So let's help her to do that, everybody. We'll be talking with Chris here at as they say in the broadcast world, at the bottom of the hour, which is 29 minutes or 29 minutes from 19 minutes from now. What time? 19 minutes from now. It's 11 minutes after. Just basic math. I'm glad it's not Andrew Yang, because he would really make fun of me then. If I got my math. Remember that guy?
Aren't we supposed to do traffic on the 11s?
We should do traffic on the 11th. We need to get a traffic bumper sound. Hey, but other things happening in the world of politics. Rob, it was just 2 short years ago when at this very time we were gathering together in Iowa and had presidential candidates seeking the nomination for the Democratic Party. And remember all that? 2 years. And in, now just a few short months, we're going to be into a whole other election, which are going to be important. And all the issues now that we're in 2022, it's much more difficult to say, well, the midterm elections are a long way off. Now we can just say the midterm elections are approaching and be accurate about that. So all these political things we talk about now have real implication. And I don't know about you, Rob, but I keep hearing from friends and family members and people who care about this and listen to the work that we do at Vote Common Good, saying, "Hey, lost cause, friends. Republicans are going to win the House. It's settled fact. Like they are confident, as a sports fan, that their crowd, their team is just not going to succeed. That the other team is going to be successful." I am yet to give up the ghost on this. I think there's a lot of reasons why Republicans might have to continue to sit out having control of the federal government because of their bad behavior. That they're not out on parole yet, in my book, and I think we should keep them in the penalty box for a while and not allow them to have control of the federal government. But other people are talking about it like it's a done deal. Now on this 11th of January, finding ourselves just 10 short months out from the election. What do you think? You think it's a settled fact? Is this ball in the air already? And there's no more thing, no other things we can do to affect the trajectory of this ball? Is it
It's a lot of sports metaphors that you're coming with here, Doug.
Yeah, a lot of them. I'm loaded with them. After the big college football championship game last night, which, good golly, could they stretch this stuff into more seasons?
Did you watch the game? It was really. Did you watch the game?
No.
It was a really, really fantastic game. Georgia pulled away at the very end with a pick six, but it was a really enjoyable game, and just proof that
with a pick six. SEC, did you hear that, friends? Is that when the defensive team intercepts a pass and then runs it back for a touchdown?
Yes.
Is that a pick six?
Pick six.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a fun little term. So, anyways, really I'm not a gambler because I think if I were, it would become a problem. So I'm just not a gambler. And so I have not put money on this. Mm-hmm. But if I was going to, I would not hesitate to wager a significant amount of money on the Republicans taking the House of Representatives. Now, I think if I had to make a prediction, if I had to make a bet, that's what I would make. Now, I'm gonna work like crazy to, try to make sure that doesn't happen. I think there is hope for Democrats. And I think there's a few things that can happen. One is I think this, and we're going to talk a bit about the move that Democrats are making to preserve voting rights. I think that's tremendously important because making it easier for people to vote. There are more Democrats in the United States. There are more people with a more liberal or left bent in the United States. And so, part of the playbook for Republicans has been to make it more difficult for those people to vote. And so preserving voting rights, tremendously important. Expanding the electorate like they did in Georgia, like Stacey Abrams did in Georgia, where when you register people to vote and get them involved, that's a winning strategy. If that happens, that's something that can help. I think there's a number of political things that can take place. Frankly, I think the Supreme Court decision on Roe v. Wade is going to weigh significantly on the midterms, particularly if Roe gets overturned by the Supreme Court. I think that's going to have a real significant impact on the midterms. I think that's something that could actually change the trajectory of where we're headed. It would be interesting to see if we've talked a lot about January 6th and the insurrection, and, you just keep waiting for like some traction on this stuff, right? Like the appalling corruption, the appalling, just disrespect for the Constitution and the norms of our country, the appalling behavior of so many Trump Republicans. Mm-hmm. And you just keep waiting for there to be some reaction to this, some backlash to it. And, you wonder, like, okay, if Trump gets indicted, does that, like, if January 6th commission, if they come back with something, what's going to be the thing that's going to flip the switch? I'm reading right now. I'm reading Brene Brown's new book, Atlas of the Heart, which I highly recommend.
You've been bragging all about it. You've said she dug deep into your soul and found your inner life on Facebook. I saw you
Yeah,
already.
well, I posted one picture of the cover, and so I'm not sure that's bragging a lot about it.
I don't know. You
But
wrote a
it's a
lot of really adoring words about the power of that book,
well,
Rob. It's
yeah, it's fantastic.
heartfelt.
It's as an Enneagram 3 who has been called by people I love and am close to. I've been called an emotional paraplegic. Struggle to get in touch with my feelings, even to name them at times. To know, we have this thing where Vanessa will say to me, "Why are you mad at me?" And I say, "I'm not mad at you." And she's like, "Yes, you are." I'm like, "No, I'm
Hmm.
not." And then 3 days later, I'll be like, "I am so mad at you." And she'll
Huh.
say, "I know, I told you that 3 days ago." I just, so
Isn't
anyway,
naming your
so
feelings like people that live on farms passing along the advice to their kids to not name the farm cats and name the
that's
chickens
right.
or name the
Yeah, you don't
cows?
name
Like,
the animals that are going to
yeah, you
be
don't name
dinner.
the animals there. Isn't that what that's basically equivalent to?
Ah, yeah, that's funny. So, anyways, Atlas of the Hearts is a wonderful book about our emotions, and it's been really helpful to me. So, I was reading yesterday, and she was talking about this tendency that people have. She's talking about doomsday cults and what happens when the predictions don't come true.
Mm-hmm.
The cult leader says, the UFO is coming to take us away on this date, and then everybody's waiting for that to happen, and then it doesn't happen, and you expect that to
Yeah.
cause people to question, to turn their backs on, to become disillusioned with. What happens more often than not is when the predictions don't come true, people double down.
Yeah.
They actually and it's not everybody, but the most committed people to the cult um,
Wow.
become even more committed.
Right.
And when I
Fascinating.
read this,
Fascinating.
when I read this yesterday, I was thinking about Trumpism and the cult of Trump, and how we have seen so many people double down. So much has been proven to be lies. So, like the cruelty, the incompetence, and the corruption have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, and people just double down.
Double down.
The real true believers have doubled down, and that's a scary thing. So when news breaks today, or recently, was it last night or today, that like Steve Bannon has been indicted? It's not.
It's our little sound every time another Trump-related person is indicted by the federal government and declared to be a criminal by investigators. They get a little sparkles.
Every time a Trump
Gonna wear that
administration
button
official
out.
gets indicted, a QAnon shaman gets his horns. Um, so we like you get this news and you think, okay, what's the impact of this going to be? There's not going to be any
Yeah.
political
No.
impact of Steve
Not
Bannon's
you're right.
indictment.
Not on the core believers, and that's the big difference, right? That the
Yeah.
core heart of it all, people stick with it. Yeah, and look, I really hope that the democratic system doesn't only move to a turnout model.
Mm.
Some of us have been working the last 4 years. Some of us have been saying this for the last 15 years. Turnout models are not a sufficient political strategy
Mm.
just to get more people who already agree with you to turn out on voting day. Now, yes, we should have turnout models. Of course, we should have turnout models. As we talked about yesterday, for sure, we need to get people registered to vote and make voting more accessible and easier. But that in and of itself is not a political strategy, not
Mm.
for actually winning the arguments and winning the hearts and minds. You sent an interesting article around here that says that in the last 50 years, society in North America, in the United States rather, has become more liberal on all kinds of issues.
Decidedly more liberal. Mm.
Yes, for sure. I mean, who, in a lot of ways, who would have thought
Mm-hmm.
that people would be supporting the kinds of things you are. But voting more for Republicans, not only at the national level, because you can sort of be confused by that, but at the state level, even states, and voting for Republicans who don't necessarily agree with those more liberal beliefs and attitudes. It's not as if, oh, that's just a sign that the Republican Party has become more liberal. It's
No.
become illiberal in the recent years, more authoritarian, more powerful, more the legislature will tell you what to do. I mean, current Republicans sound like people that the Republicans of the late 80s and early 90s would run against because of their
Mm-hmm.
big government interference. It's just bizarre, because part of what is happening is that the attitudes of people in America don't translate into their political behavior. And that the thing between your attitude and belief and your behavior often is your identity. That's the thing that's not changing. So people can hold a set of beliefs and behave in a way that doesn't fit those beliefs because something in the way they see themselves, their identity, causes them to behave differently. Lots of people deal with this. People in marketing and everything, like they'll talk to people about, let's just use a cell phone for an example. A lot of people will make the argument that the Android phones and the Pixel phones and the Samsung, Sony phones are better phones than an iPhone. And if you were to run them side by side and do all this kind of stuff and all the things people would want a phone to do, those other phones do better.
And you know what? When I hear
But
that,
people don't buy those phones.
I shrug my shoulders and go, "Yeah, but I'm an iPhone guy."
I'm an iPhone guy. Yeah. And so you tolerate all kinds of things that then people that have an Android phone are like, that new feature, I've had that on my Pixel phone since 2009, and you're like, yeah, I know. I'm really glad I now have it because my belief about what's better and my behavior are being mitigated by my identity. And this is the work that we all have to do. And so I really hope that people get into the identity and the persuasion part of all this work. Now, what didn't encourage me today? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what's really fascinating though, Doug, is that you're hitting on, and so often persuasion is about policy. It's about individual beliefs. It's about, convincing someone that, that the minimum wage should be raised, or convincing someone that the death penalty should be abolished, or convincing someone of this or that. And it's issue oriented. And what you're getting at is that even when these people switch on these issues, as this study shows us, even as they move on these issues, that identity block keeps them from shifting, their voting patterns. And so that persuasion work being focused in on identity, that's a really interesting thing that I don't think in the political space, I don't think there's a lot of work being done on that.
Yeah, I think you're right, because so much of our persuasion, or when we talk about it, we tend to think about that in the area of beliefs. So if you think about beliefs, identity, and action, and I sort of put these, left to right on a piece of paper, literally did this now on the piece of paper in front of me. So much persuasion we think is talk to people about the better ideas. Mm-hmm. The number of candidates who we've worked with that we've sat in rooms and heard them say, what really kills me about all of this is we are the people with the better ideas. Now, both political parties say that, but Democrats especially. We're the people that have a plan for this. We know what we'd want to do about all of that. Mm-hmm. Why don't people then vote for us? So there's a space between beliefs, ideas, knowledge, understanding, and actions. Where we need to put our persuasion work is toward changed actions. In other words, who you vote for, not changed beliefs. Yeah. You and I have spent our life as pastors in the belief sector of American society. Yeah. And changing people's beliefs normally follows their actions and follows other kinds of persuasion that has gone on. It's much more sophisticated than delivering information. I mean, Omicron and vaccines and masks and all are just case in point.
Yes. As when we started our church 15 plus years ago, one of the things we intentionally did is we talked about how there is in church life, there's this there's kind of three categories. There's belong, where you feel like you're part
Hmm.
of the group. Believe, which is, those things that you assent to, and then behavior, what you do. Um, and most churches, the model is to become a member, whatever that means. You
Yeah.
have to believe certain things. You have to make a confession of faith. Then you have to behave a certain way. You have to agree to a covenant, of
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
kind that defines what your behavior is, and then you can belong. And you can't. And so, for instance, a church that I pastored once, feels like a lifetime ago, there was a lady who wanted to join the church, but she worked at a casino, and so she
Oh,
wasn't
nice.
so, like, the deacons would not let her become a church member because she worked at a casino. Her behavior kept her from belonging. So when we started our church, like, we intentionally said, well, what if people belong first?
Yeah.
What if, like, what if the first thing that we talk about is how you're loved here, you're accepted here, you're welcome here, you're one of us here, you're a part of this, and what you believe and what you do, like, that's the stuff that comes secondary.
Hmm.
And I think,
Hmm.
in our political discussions, there's got to be a way to shift that, like, the work that happens to that belonging, to that identity side of
Yes.
things, and the beliefs and behaviors are going to come after that.
Yeah. And look, this is true in politics too. That is so well said. This is the kind of stuff that in politics we don't tend to allow people to do, which is to belong first.
Yeah, there's all sorts of
There's,
purity tests, and you
yeah.
didn't say this right, you didn't do that right, and there's, the whole big tent thing gets held with derision by many people, and yeah,
Yeah.
it
Right.
it, it becomes a super complicated thing.
I'm thinking today about the fact that Joe Biden is going to go down to Georgia to talk about the
Yeah.
importance of voting rights. And
Mhm.
it turns out that, the biggest supporter probably in the nation, or best well-known supporter in the nation, is certainly the most influential person on this work in Georgia, for whom his presidency would not have likely been made possible
Yeah.
by Georgia without Stacey Abrams' work. Probably not have had the control of the Senate without Stacey Abrams' work. Stacey
Yes.
Abrams is not going to be at the meeting that Joe Biden is holding today, the public rally, and put that word out. She's not going to be there. And you just think, what on earth is going on? So I have no idea. I just think this kind of thing is an issue. It's not an issue. I'm not talking about beliefs, and I'm not even talking about behaviors. As you put it, I'm talking about the belonging. Are you in on this thing together?
Yeah.
That is the work. Well, I know we're going to have Chris on for a minute. I just want to say thanks to Patricia for being with us, for Dave for being with us, for Mike, and of course we're looking out for Tim in Baton Rouge, and Nancy and Ann and JoJo and Dave. Or said thank you to Dave, but Dave, you get two times because you made two
Well,
different comments.
we really need to shout out Nancy for liking my shaman horn joke. So,
Yeah, that's a good
there
one.
we
Yeah, yeah, I love the shaman horn joke. There's a little something for you there, Nancy. We do appreciate all of you listening, and I would love your thoughts on this too. Where are you on this idea of how we organize our persuasion?
Yeah.
Because if we simply in politics, and we talked about this some yesterday, Rob, so I won't rehash it in full detail, but if the need for voting rights changes is simply a partisan outcome, meaning let's make voting more available for more people because that helps Democrats win,
Mm.
that rationale actually works against the
Yeah.
value of voting rights. We should be
Yes.
pushing for voting rights because it's better for our society if more people are engaged. It's better for our
Yes.
culture and for our understanding of one another if more people participate. Now, getting more people to participate isn't necessarily going to make it happen. Our last presidential election had more people vote than any other time. I don't know if the percentages was more than any other time, but it's top two, I think, if it wasn't the most highest percentage. And there's greater animosity, than there ever
Mhm.
has been. So it's not enough, but we are in better shape when more people vote. And the
Yep.
goal should be more people participating in our democracy and with the least amount of hindrances and restrictions on them, because that's better for democracy.
Yes.
Full stop. Republicans might do better in one set of conditions, Democrats in another, and they should both function in those conditions. But we shouldn't be saying, let's increase voting rights because it allows Democrats to win. Yeah. That kind of a calculus, that is, yes. I just think that's harmful. It shouldn't be a strategy. It shouldn't be a turnout strategy, in other words. And the obsession in our politics to talk about what are we going to do to get turnout. I'm not saying, again, we shouldn't do it. I'm saying it shouldn't be our sole focus, which it feels like it is in most conversations. What do we do to get more people who already will vote for us to do the thing that they said they were going to do? How could we, the alternative is, how could we get people to do something that they would like to do that they weren't already planning to do? That's the persuasion around behavior, not the persuasion around beliefs. And the thing you have to work on in that equation, as we've said over and over here, is the idea of identity. Does it seem possible for someone to be able to do that thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think too that there is, there's kind of two things that run. There's two tracks that run side by side in the mechanisms of a campaign that is working to get elected. Having a strategy that is about voter registration, expanding the electorate that way, and then turning out those voters. Every campaign calculates what their win number is. And so like people probably remember Donald Trump talking about, like, they said if I got 64 million, I'd win. Like they said if I got 64 million, I'd win. I got 74 million. Why didn't I win? Because they had told him, here's your win number. And when, so you've got to do what is necessary to get there to that win number. But, there is kind of those of us that are involved in the broader political discussion have got to elevate it beyond just, scoring political points so that our team wins. Yeah. And people participating by voting is that is a greater good that is that goes beyond partisanship.
Yes, should have it. Every time it comes up that people say we need voting rights because more people would vote for Democrats if we increase the number, that because that rationale, that outcome that's going to come should be swapped for a better outcome. We will do better in this country when we talk about more participation across the system. Because voting is, while it certainly is a high standard, it's a high call. I mean, we run a group called Vote Common Good. Like, we want people to vote. We're all about it. I think voting's great. It's not the only thing you do in civic life. It's just one of the ways you act. It's an important way to act, but it's not the only one. It's like part of your system, your body's system. It's the oxygen. You need to have it. You can go very short period of time in comparison to other things you might deprive yourself of without oxygen. It's crucial. But if all you have is oxygen and you don't have the other parts of your system working, well, of course, it's not enough for a person to be alive. Our politics can't simply infuse more oxygen. We can't just set up oxygen bars all over, put people on oxygen tanks and think, okay, that's really what we need. So we need to do all the work of a human, of a human-like system in our politics, and that's what I wish were happening more. When I listen to what I consider to be the people who shouldn't be taken seriously in politics, a lot of the Trumpist kinds of people, they talk about things in an animating, motivating narrative of what they would say they are up to, what they're doing. It's not accurate, but they speak about it in a way that is, heroic, right? Not speaking about it in a way that is tactical, simply. And it's one of the things that we've talked about for a long time in the work of persuasion, and why we're so excited that, Chris is going to be on with us, is that you can motivate it in a whole different way to allow people to participate. And that's why we're so glad to have Chris Jones.
Yeah.
here.
And, we think about, you think about like effective messaging, and it's so frustrating at times because the other side has like this really, really effective messaging that can inspire people, even for, negative things. One of the things that is so inspiring about Chris, who's our guest today, was his campaign launch video. Now, campaign launch videos have become like a thing. It's like a whole cottage industry. But Chris's was one of the best and most inspiring I've ever seen. And I remember when it came out, I immediately sent links to everybody on the Vote Common Good team and said, "Hey, you got to watch this," because it's really amazing. And then, as soon as we saw it, we got in touch with Chris because we wanted to be connected with him. So we thought we'd show it to everybody, so you can see what we're talking about. And so here's Chris's launch video, and then after that, we're gonna chat with him.
To me, there's never been a conflict between science and faith. I'm a physicist. I'm also an ordained minister. Now imagine that this stole represents time. Not just my lifetime, but my ancestors and my children. As a Christian, I thank God every day for that time. As a physicist, I know that time is also relative. And with the right amount of energy, you can bend it and be anywhere. My ancestors labored in the soil of rural Arkansas, making my 3 daughters 8th generation Arkansans. By the 1940s, my pawpaw Jesse Torrance, with his 3rd grade education, was driving a truck he couldn't afford to own. But by the 1980s, he was helping me set up my own business. His legacy was entrepreneurship and hard work.
2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff.
Some lessons were tougher than others. That moment, something opened up in me, a world of science and sacrifice, service and exploration. I knew then that I wanted to be an astronaut. I didn't know that being deaf in my right ear would keep me from flying. 10 years later, I accepted a full NASA scholarship, and my life changed forever. I went to Morehouse College for physics and math, and MIT for nuclear engineering, and a PhD in urban planning. And along the way, God just blessed me. My wife is Dr. Geraldine Jones. She's an Air Force veteran and ER doc. She's my partner and an incredible mom to our girls. And I love being a girl dad. I was also blessed to run the Arkansas Regional Innovation Hub, where we gave access to the tools and technology that Arkansans need to build businesses and create jobs. Arkansas is ready for a big leap forward, but we need the right leaders. The last few years have shown just how easy it is to slip back in time. So that's why I'm running for governor. Taking Arkansas into the future requires improving education opportunities from cradle to career, enhancing infrastructure from bridges to rural broadband, and making available every tool Arkansans need to build businesses and healthy families. It's about living up to our potential. It's about living out our values. It's about working hard together. And my fellow Arkansans, it's about time.
I got to tell you, Chris, I've watched that video many times, probably not as many times as you have, my friend, but I get emotional watching it even this time. It is so good and so good to have you. Thanks for sharing your story in that video, and thanks for running for the next governor of Arkansas. Hey, what else, when people see your video and they get all enraptured like we do and get a little candidate crush on you over it, what else do you like to tell people that's not captured there? Like what other pieces of you and your candidacy and where you are now do you think, well, you think that's something? Here's what's really up right now, or what's not captured in the video. What else is there?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, let me say I'm super thankful for you all having me on the show. It's an honor. When we first connected, I felt like there was a connection that we had, both not only in terms of the work that you all are doing, but in terms of the values that you sit on in order to do that work. And that really kind of leads to the answer to your question. In many ways, what I follow up with folks are really a couple things. And one, I don't consider myself anything special by any stretch of the imagination. I don't. I think I am super fortunate. I am super blessed. But by the grace of God, go I. Right. Like the only reason I'm here is by God's grace, and I know that that between that and some hard work and some some decisions that just turned out to be right, I am here.
Mhm.
So I try to remind folks of that, which means that any of us could be in any position, and any of us can step up and make change.
Hmm.
And the other thing is that this is all grounded in a set of values that matter,
Mhm.
right? Because what I want people to know, and it's interesting, I've had this question a couple times about separation of church and state, and oh, why do you lead with being a minister and everything, and why we should look. There is certainly the state should not. There should not be a state-defined religion. Absolutely not. And at the same time, every decision we make is sits on a set of values that we have. And so what I want to do is I want to make sure that people are clear about what my values are, and clear about the perspective through which I see the world. So then they can decide, given his values and his perspective, is this someone that we want to lead the state?
Yeah. Boy, that's really well said. Hey, Rob, were you saying something there?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Your website is chrisforgovernor.com.
Yep.
People should go there, follow, donate, offer to help, donate,
Yeah.
whatever else you can do
Donate.
on our site. You probably have a donate button. They can consider that.
Certainly a donate button. Make it easy.
As somebody who has
Smash
bought
that
more,
donate button.
as somebody who has bought more than their share of URLs in my life, the fact that chrisforgovernor.com was available is something that I don't know if other people have noticed. I think it's worth noting. How long have you been thinking about running for governor here? Did you make this decision back in 1997 when they were launching, URLs, or what? How is that happen to be available?
I don't know how it's actually was still available. It was a shock to me also.
Wow.
But my decision to run was really my decision to serve. And it happened when I was 8. So since I was 8 years old, I've known that I wanted to serve as governor of Arkansas.
Really?
Yeah, man, I love the state, my family. I'm a 7th generation Arkansan. And at the age of 8, which is also the year that the Challenger accident happened.
Yeah.
My dad took me to the mall in Little Rock. I'm from Pine Bluff, 45 minutes away. And in the mall, we met Bill Clinton. And he was governor at the time. And I was fascinated by the exchange, even as a kid, and his care and concern. And I grew up in a family that required us to care about others and required us to use our gifts and skills for others. So that was a part of my DNA and who I am. And I went home and said, well, Dad, okay, he's governor. What's a governor do? And he said, let's go look it up. So we pulled the Encyclopedia Britannica. Fortunately, we had G, because we didn't have the
Yeah. Fortunately, we had G. You may have just had to be president if you didn't have the G around. You're like, I don't know, maybe a president, senator.
Yeah. And so at that moment, I realized that a governor can make a difference in people's lives, and a governor can help folks. And that's when I decided that I want to serve. I want to help.
Yeah. Incredible. So how do you, I'm listening to that video again and hearing your pedigree, right? Morehouse College, you study astrophysics, you end up at MIT, you're at the Marshall Labs. And then I think it said something about you got a PhD in urban planning. Was that right? It feels like urban planning is in another discipline at a university than the sciences. What was going on with the move to urban planning when you have such a science and obviously a political background as a child, or political interest as a child? Yeah. Why that shift into urban planning?
It was a journey, and the journey, the thread really goes back to helping people, goes back to equity, goes back to inclusion. So the thread of my professional life, the thread of my academic life. I love science because I want to answer questions, but I want to answer questions because I want to make a difference.
Hmm.
Right. And so I as a kid, I wanted to be the inventor of an energy source that was sustainable and would provide electricity for the whole world. Right. Like that's because I wanted to solve that problem. But the journey though, went to MIT for nuclear engineering. And what I realized was that no matter what the technical solution is, the barrier is actually policy.
Wow.
And so you need to understand policy and social dynamics in order to really make change. And so my second master's degree is in technology and policy. And then I picked up the PhD in urban planning. And interestingly, it is urban planning, but I focused on large scale energy systems. So it's still energy.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. So I mean, just throwing in there casually, second master's and picked up the PhD. We'll let that slide. But Chris, so when we think about the difference that you could make in the state, it feels to me like in a lot of ways Arkansas is moving in the right direction in so many different areas. And yet at the same time, ranks near the bottom in many of the metrics that are used to, kind of rank states, particularly education, poverty, healthcare, those kinds of things, and has a legislature dominated by Republicans that seem obsessed with not addressing those issues, but rather pushing their own ultra conservative social agenda. How do you move the state in the right direction given like where we're at right now, and given that like everything would have to go through what would be in my estimation, my guess would be a not so friendly legislature?
Yeah, Rob, that's that's a great question. I would shift the framing of that a little bit and say that the difference that we could make, right? So there's no difference that Chris can make alone. Period. Like it just won't happen. I can, I can barely make a difference in my house with my 3 girls on my own, right? So, like,
Right. Well said.
But the reality is there were about 1 million people who did not participate in the election process last year. We're a state of 3 million people. They could have participated, didn't.
Wow.
They for various reasons, many of them justified, they've chosen to not participate in the process.
Yeah.
And so,
and just can I jump in, Chris, just as a parenthesis for our listeners? Arkansas has the second lowest voter participation rate in the country.
Oh, okay.
There are, to put it in kind of common vernacular, like there's a lot of votes left on the table.
A lot.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No. That's perfect framing because, and here, let me take it one step further. There were more people who did not vote in the presidential than everyone who voted in the last gubernatorial. Right?
Wow.
So when you think about that, then the question becomes, what are the interactions like on a day-to-day basis? When I go to Gillette or Rector or McNeil or Gould or Stamps, the interactions that I have on a day-to-day basis are of folks who want to have high-quality education, folks who want to have good infrastructure, good broadband, folks who want to have high-paying jobs. And so my thing is when we lean in as a collective, that's how we do a couple things. And I'll answer your question about the legislature, because I think step one is you change the pieces on the board. Right now, the pieces on the board are geared towards issues that have nothing to do with my kitchen table. Like, whether it's being mean to trans kids or being belligerent to folks who just want to vote, or being I can't even think of the appropriate word, but or being careless and callous with folks around issues of gun violence, right? And so whatever that is, they're not focused on the bread and butter issues.
Yeah.
Again, education, infrastructure, economic development. And so we need to change the pieces on the board. And one other thing I'll tell you is that last cycle, we had 55 of the 135 seats that went uncontested.
Wow.
55 of the 135 seats went uncontested. Now, the good thing is that this year, every seat is up for re-election. All 135 state legislative seats. So we changed the pieces on the board as step one. Now, if you can't change the pieces on the board, I still think that there are a number of levers to pull, not the least of which is all those folks that have said the system isn't working for me, the government isn't working for me, getting them engaged now in the process and keeping them engaged. And as an example, we've been across the state already, and starting February 1, we're going to do our first 30-day 75-county tour. So in 30 days, we're going to hit all 75 counties, and we're going to go to churches and restaurants and backyards and you name it, and have conversations and encourage people to lean into the process.
So Chris, one of the things we talk about a lot in this podcast is that turnout models are not sufficient for changing hearts and minds and shifting the voting population. Arkansas is an interesting state in that it 10 or 15 years ago was seen as a little bit more purple. You know, your own reference was that, you know, you had a Democratic governor when you were a kid, and something has changed. People tend to write off Arkansas now as if it's just the decision has been made. Actually, I have a current governor there that on occasion sounds more reasonable, like Republicans used to sound about caring for things. The possible person that you'll be running against, she doesn't sound that reasonable to me when I hear her out. Anyway, you obviously need to get people who didn't participate in the electoral process to engage. Right. Super important. Right. How do you also think about getting people who have in the past election cycles voted party line for Republicans or voted for a certain candidate to make a decision to do something different and vote for your campaign in this election? How much of that's like, where's that calculation for you in the work you're doing?
Look, it's critical. I mean, you know, most families, I would dare I say all families in Arkansas, have both Democrat and Republicans in the family. So like, we are all mixed families, mixed political families in the state. And and when I think back to Rockefeller Republicans, you know, Rockefeller focused on issues that mattered to people, to poor people, to people in the Delta and South Arkansas, to disengaged and disaffected people. And my belief is that there are a lot of Republicans, independents who care about issues that matter, who are calling, you know, you think about it, we have a large evangelical population in Arkansas. You know, a lot of folks who are religious in some way or another. And I think about my own faith upbringing, and we're called to help our neighbors. And we're called to be there for them and to love them, right? And I think there are a lot of folks who believe that, and they're looking for a way to actualize that. And so, yeah, absolutely. Like this is about, that's why I said it's not what I can do to make the state better. It's what we can do to make the state better. And look, the only way we can win this thing is by all of us doing it together. And we know that if we do it together, we can certainly win the championship. And there's no reason for us to be at the bottom.
What is the calendar for someone running for governor? So before you get to election day in Tuesday in November, what's going to happen between now and then? Are there primaries that you're going to have to be in? Tell us what the calendar looks like for you.
Yeah. So the first, we're out and about now. It's a long interview process as the way I see it, and I'm loving it and enjoying it. So it's boots on the ground right now. We file in March, the top of March. That's when you declare whether you're actually going to run. And then the primary is May 24th. So on May 24th, we need everyone to turn out and vote. and make your say, like make your statement. Vote. My first priority is to get people to vote. I would love for you to vote for me. Absolutely. I believe that we can do that, but vote for someone. And then once we get through May, it's a mad dash until November. And I want to go back a little bit to what you said earlier, because I think it does tie to what we're doing in this journey between May 24th and November, is that I fundamentally believe that when you engage Arkansans directly and respectfully, and you give them a chance, they'll give you a chance, hands down.
Yep.
Hands down.
Yeah.
And I've talked to folks who would say, oh, you will never get their support.
Yeah.
But we have a 15, 20-minute conversation and find out, wait a minute, yeah, you have 3 girls too. And you care about, making sure that they have a great future as well. That's what people care about.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, goodness. Chris, what's it like to run for governor? Talk to us as a human being for a second. Like, what's it like COVID? I know your daughters are doing virtual school and your wife's is a doctor. And, which I think because your daughters are doing virtual school, that probably means that you are doing a lot of,
homework,
teacher dad stuff. What is it left for, people who have never run for office, which is the majority of people. What's it like? What's it really like? It's not the West Wing. It's not like you're not living in an Aaron Sorkin show. What's it like?
No. So a couple of things for me, there are layers to it. And one layer is that this is the actualization of a childhood dream. Right. So I sometimes have to pinch myself, because as the 8-year-old Chris said, I want to serve Arkansans as governor. And now we're in a moment where it is a possibility. So I have to pinch myself and sometimes, and then it's stressful. Now it's complicated. You get pulled in so many directions because everyone has advice, everyone has an approach, everyone says this is the right way you do it. And my challenge is constantly recentering and regrounding myself. Because at the end of the day, I need to, in 2023, I will not be a candidate for governor anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Right. So at some point, we're going to get past this moment, this season. And what I try to remind myself every day is that the relationships I had before I ran are going to be there after I run, and I'll pick up new relationships. And what matters is those human relationships and how I show up. So, it's a mix of stressfulness in terms of staying centered and excitement, because I love people. I love engaging with folks. I love learning and listening to people. So being able to get out and do that is exciting, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting because you have to sort of flip modes a lot. But I'll tell you this too. I had a conversation with a guy in Gillette who owns a farm, and hearing him talk about the expense of the equipment and the uncertainty that exists, and the enormous stress that he's under. Like, what I'm going through is nothing. It's a breeze compared to what folks go through in Arkansas, and I'm certainly willing to deal with this stress to hopefully and prayerfully relieve some of the stress that my neighbors in Arkansas have to deal with.
Well, Chris, we're super excited to see us as big boosters of your run. We're pulling for you, here on May 24th. And I'm trusting you're going to register to run in March when the day comes.
Oh, so I will certainly register to run. And look, the 30-day tour is February 1 to March 1. And so we're going to make a mad dash, and we're going to end by filing. And the reason I've always said,
Genius.
My approach to solving problems is you start by listening.
Yeah.
And my approach to innovation is you start by listening. And so, yes, we've been out already, but before we make that real official, I need to get out and listen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, official is an interesting category, isn't it, in politics? Like you're always, the next meaningful moment is always in front of you, right? So it's not as if you prepare and then you go and do. It's staying in the flow all the time. And we're super glad you're doing it. Would love to help, and hope everybody goes to chrisforgovernor.com.
Yes.
Great.
Smash the
I'd
donate
appreciate
button.
donation. I'd appreciate your vote, and I'd appreciate your prayers.
Well, this is the right crowd to ask for that. And some people have said some nice things in the chats here. People are saying things like the difference he would make in the country. I would love to vote for him. Anyone who can rear 3 daughters can run any state in the country. People are tagging this thing to their friends. So yeah, it's a real breath of hope and fresh air in politics. And I hope people are going to pay attention outside of Arkansas, but most certainly in Arkansas. So
thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you, friend.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Take care. Good to see you all.
See you. All right. That's such a day, huh? What a good day. Well,
just love that guy, don't you? Oh,
yep.
Just love him.
Yep. And when he's the governor of Arkansas, I'm going to be hitting him up to come on Fridays on the science themed podcast.
Yep.
We're going to talk a little nuclear energy with the governor of Arkansas.
I was gonna give him a little bit of a hard time that he doesn't always text me back real quickly, but
he's a slow texter. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, he's a dad of 3 who's running for governor. I need to cut him some slack.
He's sorting you out. He's got filters turned on his text, perhaps. Hey, thanks everybody for being a part of it all. We appreciate all your comments today and your participating in it. Those of you that listen on the podcast, we're also interested in your thoughts. So send it to us over at podcast@votecommon.good.com. And I will say, you can watch all this stuff on YouTube. So if you have friends that don't like podcasts but like YouTube, we have a YouTube channel, and we're going to make a big push here this month to get people to subscribe to our YouTube channel for all kinds of reasons to come sooner. So if you're listening right now, go over to YouTube, look up Vote Common Good, subscribe. And if you have multiple email addresses, like a work email address and a personal email address, and one you use when you order stuff off of Facebook and one that you use when you order off of Etsy, log in all those times into Google and go over to subscribe multiple times. It's all about subscribers, not individuals over there. So anyway, if you listen to the podcast, share it around. If you don't listen, you're only on the live stream. This is actually a podcast too. There's a votecommon.good.com/podcast. It also helps us and the algorithms to pay attention to us if you subscribe. So we'd love that. All right. Producer Dan, anything from you today?
No, great show, man. I want to move to Arkansas and vote for him. So
we should all move to Arkansas and vote for him. Why don't we just move in? How long do you have to live in Arkansas before you can vote? When do we have to move before November 8th? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, my guess is probably 6 months or so. But
okay, I got a couple months then.
Let's look that up. Find that out. Okay. Well, speaking of moving, we got to move it along here. So
you got Wesley Puck duty.
Hey, yeah, I do have Wesley Puck duty. It's the highlight of my week. Hey, tomorrow we have Or Rose from Hebrew College, the Rabbi Or Rose on our Faith Day. It's going to be a great day. So we'll talk to you all tomorrow.